and welcome to another episode of the Board Game Barbecue Podcast, episode 287. Thanks for tuning in. Proudly brought to you by Advent Games and our Patreons. My name's Dan. I'll be your host with the most. That's a bit bold. I'll be your host this morning. We're coming to you live on Easter morning, and I'm joined by my fellow Easter bunnies. Connor, how you going, my friend?
What up, Dan? I'm throwing up my ears.
Yeah.
Throwing up my ears.
Little peace signs going on.
Yeah, peace signs. Good. Full of chocolate already. Let's see how that goes.
I've had my fair share as well. And our own little cottontail, it's Lauren. Hey, Lauren.
How's it going, mate?
Going really good. And it's only been a week. We're coming fresh off the back of all of us visiting the Brisbane game day, and as well as Adrian's birthday. I'm still running hot. That was such a great weekend.
It's like proper. I'm still jazzed.
I'm still riding that high.
Yeah.
I felt hungover going to work.
Yeah. I was at work, and my friend who sits next to me in the office goes, "How you going?" And I just go, "Yep." And he just laughed at me. He was like, yeah. Okay.
I was yawning all throughout every meeting I had this week. I've only just caught up on the sleep debt that I accumulated over last weekend. I don't think there was a single day or a single morning that I was in bed before 2 a.m. It was board gaming right up until sort of my eyes were hanging out of my head.
I mentioned previously on a couple of episodes, like I'd been in a bit of like a rut with not playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last few weekends we've had the board game day, Dan, the Melbourne one. So I played heaps of games there. And then 80's birthday and the game day where I saw all of you guys and then played heaps of games. And now it's Easter weekend and I'm here with my family. I'm recording from my family home, Casa del Divine. And I'm playing heaps of games. So it's just funny. Like it's like when it rains, it pours, like big time.
Yeah. So as a result, we have for you an action-packed, game-packed episode of probably most of the games that we played last week. I know I played a ton of games, most of which were not necessarily new games, but new to me. I think Connor taught me a couple. Lauren taught me a couple. Some of the community went, Dan, you need to come and play this because I think this is going to be your jam. And 9 times out of 10, they were 100% correct. So we might start with you, Lauren. What have you been playing lately? What do you want to tell everyone all about?
Well, I can see on the roster a few games that you guys are going to mention that I'll definitely want to dip my hat in and talk about. Chat about actually a few games I've played since coming back from Brisbane. So the first one, which was just sitting on my doorstep waiting for me, was Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs, which has just fulfilled.
The smallest box with the largest campaign.
What a tagline. And it came, like Tom, one of our community members, I forgot that I'd ordered the Frosthaven Surface books. So it came in this gigantic box and I was a little disappointed. I was like, what's going on? This is my tiny game. But sure enough, it is very, very small. Have either of you played Mice and Mystics or seen Mice and Mystics?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've not played it, yeah.
Yeah, so I've played Mice and Mystics, but I never finished that campaign. It's got the same kind of charm, right? It's these mercenaries that have been shrunk down to an itty-bitty size, and you have to fight foes that are kind of your size. But instead of in Mice and Mystics, you'll fight little centipedes and cockroaches, and you use a button for a shield.
Cute.
Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs kind of sticks to its lane. You're still fighting the same enemies that you fight in regular Gloomhaven. I was pretty impressed with how much they were able to keep the kind of essence of the game in this really tiny package, and it was quite cool. I've only played a couple of missions because the first mission you do, you can just follow this Let's Play, which if you've played regular Gloomhaven, a lot of it's really familiar. But it's like, all right, gloves off, you now know how to play. Go online and see our 42-page rule book for the rest of this game. But it's very cool. I think it manages to do a lot of things that regular Gloomhaven does, which is cool.
Yeah, I was going to ask, and you kind of answered just then, because Jaws of the Lion, they step out the key elements of the game over a series of missions, or do they just throw you in and then say, these are all the different parts and the bells and whistles?
They don't throw you in. They give you enough rules you need to do the first scenario. So you'd have to kind of read that little Let's Play and play the first scenario. And then it says, okay, now if you want to learn about items, and look at the rule book. But it's cool. Like they managed to, instead of having these monster deck or your modifier deck, they've got a little die.
Nice.
And depending on what you roll, it's kind of like a little grid. And you look at, okay, I rolled on this column and we're down to this row, and that's the modifier I get. So they really kind of interesting ways. They also, your cards have an A and a B side. And so you kind of, once you use it once, you flip it over to its B, and once you use it, then it's gone. So lots of like interesting little ways that they managed to condense it. I do think, though, that they lost a little bit of the charm when they condensed it. Like Mice and Mystics is oozes with that charm, but you can't really get that with the Buttons and Bugs tiny package. I will say the people that have painted those tiny miniatures, have you seen those online?
I've seen the minis. I haven't seen them painted though, but they're tiny. They're like the little Napoleonic figures my dad used to have that are like, I don't know, like 10, like 5 mil or something like that.
Yeah, they're teeny tiny. They can fit on your fingernail. And I saw one photo, it was all of them painted on a banana, which was really funny.
Banana for scale.
Yeah,
banana for scale, banana for scale. Yeah. But yeah, Buttons and Bugs. It's a interesting little one. If you like Gloomhaven, potentially worth a shot.
Sounds good. We'll circle back to you, but Connor, what have you got to start us off on this episode?
Well, to start us off, I thought I'd start us off taking it back to the 80s. Chris up in Brisbane.
You'll have to explain to Lauren what the 80s was.
The 80s was Dan, I hate to tell you, I know it doesn't seem like it, but I was only alive for 1 year of the 80s, so just FYI.
You both made me sick.
Yeah, I know. So
get off my lawn.
The 80s was a time where it was big hair and fluoro colors that you would wear. Anyway, it's a game called Dream Crush, which is a very, very silly but very, very fun game where you are effectively trying to find your dream date. But what you're doing is, now I'll have to get some rules clarification because we played it in a way that I think is more fun. But you draw these three pictures, and they've got their cards and they have names on them. And what you're doing is essentially you work down this grid, and there's like red flags and green flags of these people, and you've got to decide in the group who would pick who for their date. And so it's things like I remember there was a guy called Balin, and he was like posing like a jock, like a high school jock, and he had a baseball bat. And it was like the date was lining up and going to a theme park. And so in the group that we played with, so it was MJ, Ben, Shane K, Chris, and myself. And everyone picked Balin to go on the date because, like, well, if people are in line, then they want to, like, he's got the baseball bat, so like he can threaten them to leave. Anyway, so you have to pick who you think would choose for their date. And then it just starts this whole conversation of like, why would you pick them? Yada, yada, yada. And then there was like another one where there was the person, their sort of like red flag was they're reading The Secret. So the book, The Secret. And they're going to become a billionaire. So it's like, do you want to put up with that on the date or do you not? And like, is that going to be better? So it's so silly. Lauren, you've played this, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. You like each round increasingly more ridiculous characteristics, and they just become worse people. And every round, it's like, who do you have the biggest crush on? And you're getting points, right, if you guess who other people want to take out. Yeah. I had one game where it was one of the cards in there owns their own board game store or something, and that's one of the earlier ones. That's not a red flag, but the red flag was owns a suspicious amount of World War II memorabilia. And so everyone was like, oh, Lauren, is she going for it? I don't know. So yeah, it's very funny. It's very, very funny.
So it's one of those games where you got to go in knowing that, like, it's just fun. So it'd be one of those like icebreaker games, a game you'd play early, and that's kind of what we did is we sat down, and I think there was a few people sort of tied up with other games on the Thursday. And I was like, yeah, I'll sit down. This looks funny. Chris said, I think you would enjoy it. And I really, really did. So that method where they increase actually sounds funny, but we just wanted to see more and more of the cards because we thought the people on the cards, like the poses they're in or whatever, was hilarious because it's pure 80s, right? So it's pure 80s. So they're dressed up in...
So is it tongue-in-cheek? Does it know that it's funny, or is it taking itself
100%.
way too seriously?
No. It's meant to be like proper silly.
Right.
Like
Gotcha.
no, it's not like like it's like whose lines anyway. The points are the points are made up and they don't matter or whatever.
Yep,
all that type of stuff. So it's if you're looking for a fun game, and I think it can play up to 5 people, maybe 6 people, and if you've got some people that love a bit of banter, this is definitely a game for you. So that was Dream Crush, just silly fun.
We talk about the fact that Elijah Wood is on one of the cards.
Is he actually?
It looks exactly like him.
That's what I was like, guys, this is totally Elijah Wood, right? And they're like, it has to be. Like, is it him?
Has to be, right?
So funny. We have to find it. We have to find it and put it in the show notes, whatever. So, Chris, or whoever owns this game, if you're listening, can you please find that card that we're talking about? I can't remember his name because they all have names, but it's definitely him, right, Lauren?
New question to the pod: is this Elijah Wood?
Yes. Actually, it could tie to our question.
Yeah, it's true.
More on that later. So I played probably the majority of the games that I played over the course of the weekend, over the 4 days, were all card games, which is fine because I did get into a game of Age of Steam, and there were a couple other sort of medium weight games that I played, but most of it were either trick takers or shedders. Lauren, I hold you responsible for sharing more than one with me, but the first one I want to talk about was a game that Megs from our community introduced us to. It's a game called Mountain Goats. So you'll remember, it might have been last year when All Play, they were bringing out Kickstarter campaigns that had 4 games sort of in one. And in fact, Bacon was another one that I'll talk about in a little while. That was I might have been part of the same one. But this one's called Mountain Goats, where you're playing as a team. You've got a team of mountain goats, and it's really, really simple. I'm looking at getting it for my boys, actually. There's these various mountains that are numbered from 5 through to 10. And at the peak of the mountain are these little tokens. And if you can get to the top of the mountain and stay there, each time you roll that number, whether it's 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, you'll actually accumulate one of those tokens. And there's a limited supply of those. But what you do on your turn is you've got a mountain goat at the bottom of every mountain. And the 5 and 6 mountains, I think, are 5 high. The 7 and 8 are 3, and the 9 and 10 are only 2. And you're rolling 4 dice, and you're trying to combine those dice together, a bit like if you've ever played Don't Stop, where you combine the dice here. I've rolled 4 numbers. I'm going to put these 2 together and make a 6. I'm going to put these 2 together and make a 10. And then you can move your mountain goat 1 step up on the 6 and 1 step up on the 10. And then you pass the dice off. But as soon as you get to the top of one of the mountains, you collect that token. And while you're at the top of the 10, when it's on your turn next, if you can roll a 10 again, you can actually claim another 10 until that pile is completely gone. And once 3 piles have been completely depleted, that's when the game ends. But at any time, if you're at the top of the mountain and another mountain goat appears at the top, they boot you back down to the bottom. It was a really, really simple game, but it was very, very strategic because there's also some bonuses. If you can get 1 marker or 1 token from every mountain, then there's bonuses at play for that as well. I think the first person to get 5 through 10, I think it's 15 points, and then it decreases after that. So it's a matter of, do I sort of spread my mountain goats across and try and move them all up? Or if you happen to roll 3 6s, then you can just go 6, 6, 6 and just move that mountain goat up 3 spots. Were you in this game, Connor?
No, I wasn't. But
Chris...
it's funny, like not to sort of derail it, but we played Scout together yesterday, and we played it with my family. So if it's a similar level to Scout,
it's a really light sort of filler game, but it was one that I wasn't familiar with before, and we're grown adults and we still had a ball playing. Particularly when it's a matter of me climbing up this one, or I can get to the top and knock Mitch off. You know which one I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the top of that one and knock Mitch off, even if it's only less points, because just to see him tumble all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain, it just brings you more joy than points could ever provide. The
Easter gift, knocking Mitch off his perch.
So that was one that I thought was worth mentioning on the episode. That's Mountain Goats.
Like weight wise, is similar to Spots, would you say?
Yes.
Or because if you're talking about
1.8, I don't think it would be quite a 2.
Yeah.
In terms of their weight, but it's really good.
Yeah, because they played spots at the game day, and they're like, "This is great. We love this game." So, and that was like, that was the whole family. So that was my nieces, my sister, and her partner.
And the fact that you've got the dice, there is a push luck element, and also a sort of there's certain dice you need to get, and it doesn't come your way. There's no way of mitigating the dice in this. It's just bad luck. Pass the dice to the next person.
Yeah, for sure.
That.
All right, Lauren, we're back to you.
Alrighty, Roo.
What's next?
I played another game that I know Connor played, and we were actually meant to play together, but I was stuck in a work call, I think, at the time in Brisbane, which is Fields of Arle.
Yeah, and then ended up playing it with Jace instead.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, that game is cool, man. Yeah, that was really, really cool. I know that sounds like super simple to say, but yeah, what did you think of it?
I really liked it. Yep. Obviously, I played with James, so I got rinsed, but that's okay. I really thoroughly enjoyed it because it's one of the few Uwe games where you can't get an extra worker. You start the game with 4, you end the game with 4. So across those 9 rounds, you're only ever going to have that amount of action. So it's quite tight and bitey in terms of kind of jostling for those spaces and actions, and strategically, whether you want to retain first player or give up first player. I really, really liked it a lot. How did your play go, Connor?
Yeah, we were the same. So that first player, so the way that the game works is you've got 2 sides of action. So it's like it's like summer and winter sides, and most of the time you can do all the actions possible on the winter side or the summer side, but there might be a couple of caveats. So maybe doing that action on the summer side will get you more resources or get you more points or whatever. But what was happening is that because Jace wanted to be the person that took that separate action, he kept being the second player, which meant that I had choices. So it was kind of this nice tension, push and pull of, well, you can take that action, but you're giving up first player. Thus, you're giving that your opponent every selection at the start of the round. And then, they might take that action, then forcing you to be the only player to take on the opposite side. I thought it was really cool parts of a lot of Uwe games, with the worker placement and the synergy and the farming and all that type of stuff. So, of course, there's farming, and of course, there's animal breeding, because he's a weirdo that likes to breed animals in his games. But again, that was cool because it was, and if you had them out in the field of Arle, if you had them out in the fields, they were roaming sort of across the fields and they weren't in a barn being able to make the extra resource. They become an extra resource that you can bank.
I was going to say, so how similar is it to Feast for Odin then? Because when I walked in, when you guys were playing it, I looked at it and straight away I just went, oh, hang on.
I think it's pretty different.
Yeah. I looked at it straight away and went, oh, it looks like Feast for Odin, and then went, oh, it's the same artist, and it's Uwe. So it's like, and then you're talking about the 2 different seasons, which kind of reminds me of when you play solo and you've got the 2 different worker placement and all that sort of stuff. What are the main differences? Because I also saw someone on a Discord recently, or just this week, say that they prefer it over Feast for Odin. And Feast for Odin is on many people's top 5, if not top games of all time.
Well, I adore Feast. Like, it's one of my favorite games. So there's obviously no raiding, there's no hunting or anything like that. It's sort of a stripped down, more simplified version. It probably gets, because Feast is the latest one of those games that he's brought out, it probably gets compared to that the most. Now, how similar it is to Agricola and Caverna, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't played those games as much. But there's no polyominoes, so they don't have that polyomino aspect, which lots of people love about Feast for Odin. There's also much, much less negative points at the beginning. So in some ways, it's less punishing to score, but you have less freedom. So there's no going off to islands, there's no expanding your area, but you're also not super beholden to space. Like, there is plenty of space for you to be able to plant your crops, keep your buildings. And then you've obviously got vehicles and machines and stuff like that too that you can keep. The other difference is that with Feast for Odin, that first action on the left-hand side is the least expensive. As you go along, it costs you more workers or more resources. That's not the case, because effectively on each side of the seasons, you've got one action. Now, that might be repeated later down, but for example, if you wanted to build a building, you've probably only got 1 or 2 chances to do that. In Feast for Odin, you've got heaps of opportunities to do that. It just might cost you more workers. So it is a lot tighter in that aspect, but it's also supposed to be a shorter game. I don't know if it was with me and Jace. It seemed to go for a long time. But yeah, that's probably the differences between it and a Feast for Odin. Again, not sure about Caverna and Agricola, but at least a Feast for Odin.
Yeah, totally right about there being more space. There's also not really the negative points too much from space that you have in Feast. You're not cramming to fill up as much as the board as you can, because I filled up most of my board and James filled up about half and he beat me. So you don't really need to. It's about how you kind of synergize the buildings with your scoring. What was super cool was how important engine building was in this game, which isn't really the case in Caverna or Agricola or Feast as much.
Yeah.
Maybe more so in Feast, but you have different fields that you're going to put on your board, and you can also put forests on your board. And every round you're going to generate, or at the end of every season, you're going to generate resources from these things you have on your board. But that's basically the only way to get those resources. So if you're short, you have to wait a full another half year or full another round to etch and get that one resource you need more for a building. And in that time, you could have been pipped to the post and James could have swept from under the rug, which definitely happened on more than one occasion.
Yeah, because so the buildings, when you buy the buildings, there's only one of those buildings. There's not multiples. So it's not like I'll go and build, except for things like stables and barns. So the stables and barns and the vehicles, there's multiples of them. However, the scoring buildings and the engine building buildings, if you I apologize for my crude sort of explanation of it, but there's only one of those. So if Lauren goes and picks that particular building, I can't get it. It's gone. But they all have similar costs. So it's like, well, I might not be able to get building X, but I can get building Y for the same cost. So there's not variable costs in terms of that. Yeah. And like you said, so there's feeding of workers, and then each time that, if effectively at the end of each turn, you have to pay a certain amount. And one of the things you have to pay is peat, not peat from our community. Yeah, peat, P-E-A-T. And that's to help heat your ovens and your fireplaces over winter time. So that's only when you're going into winter. And then when you come out of winter, you obviously then need to do stuff like maybe pay a sheep or pay food and so on and so forth. Yeah, like you said, it is a lot of engine building, far more engine building than I thought. But clearly, like, these games are made for like chase your score, in some ways made for playing solo.
Totally.
And I could see people just being like, yeah, I scored so many points. And the way they did is by having a super efficient engine.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say about it, which I also thought was cool, that in other Uwe games, you kind of breed your animals and they just sit there and they're worth points. And maybe if you're short of food, you can use them. But animals in this game get spent for different actions a lot more. So there's a lot more decision around, okay, well, I want to breed these horses or donkeys or whatever they are, because I actually need them to pay for this vehicle because they need to pull the vehicle. Or I can take this cow to the butcher, but keeping them on your board also contributes to your engine building because cows and sheep will give you more food and food you need for a lot of the buildings. So I feel like the resources are a lot more dynamic than in other Uwe games. And I really, really enjoyed this one.
Do you think, Lauren, like with the animals, it kind of felt a little bit like Clans of Caledonia-ish, where you produce the resources based on whether you've got the animals for wool or milk to make cheese? That's what it felt like. I know it's not exclusive to that, but that's kind of the vibe I was getting.
Yeah, do I settle for this one or do I want to keep pushing and upgrade it? Yeah. There's a lot of interesting mechanisms we didn't even cover in this discussion, but Fields of Isle, I think, is up there with some of my favorite Uves that I played. Really, really solid.
And it's 2-player only or solo. So that's another nice little wrinkle to the game that makes it different from his other games.
Is it?
Yeah, it's only 2-player or solo. Yeah.
Wasn't there 4 of you playing it at Adrian's?
They looked like there was 4 because
They
4
did.
people were giving us advice.
I didn't know that. I genuinely walked in and saw 4 of you playing it and just assumed that you're all getting amongst it.
Harry taught me and Jace, and then Mitch, because Mitch has played it as well. So between the two of them, when they weren't busy, they helped give us advice, and then me and Jace were the ones playing. Yeah.
So you had the peanut gallery there trying to direct traffic while you guys are trying to play. I didn't realize it was a two-player game. Well, there you go.
Yep.
There is a big box. I don't know how available it is in Australia that adds components for a third player. It includes the expansion in it. So somewhere out there is the possibility to play it with 3, but I don't know how that goes, and I don't know if that's easy to buy.
Very cool.
Great game. 10 out of 10.
That was a good little breakdown. I understand a lot more about it now. Just watching it going, it looks like Feast Road, and I'm going to go back and play some card games.
Game I want to hear about, which Connor's got written down, because that's not a hat.
Yeah, agreed.
Can we talk about this one?
Can we not? Because I hate that game. That's the worst game in existence.
I think after the first game, I jumped on Amazon straight away, and it should be arriving next week.
Yeah.
Tell us all about That's Not a Hat, Connor.
I'll try to. No, it is again similar to Grand Crash.
You said that, yeah. I was trying to explain to someone during the week, and I fumbled it completely. It's actually I found it really difficult to try and explain unless you've physically got it in front of you. But do your best.
I think because I failed so hard in my first turn, it made me have to understand the game. So it's a card game, which was kind of the theme for a lot of us over that long weekend, where you get dealt a card. Now that card has a drawing on it. You need to remember what's on your card, because over time, you will receive a card from someone else. And upon receiving the card, they will say, "Oh, hi, Lauren, please accept my traffic cone." And you need to remember if they had a traffic cone or not, whilst also remembering what your card was, because they're all face down. And you cannot pass on the card you just received. So it's all well and good if you're like, yeah, I definitely know that Lauren had a traffic cone and passed it to me. But what in holy Moses' name was my card, and now I've got to pass it on? So it's a memory game where you're trying to flick cards around the board, and if you fail 3 times, you lose and everyone else will win. So it's one of those crippling games where there's one loser and everyone else wins. And the first turn, I copped all 3 cards. And I've got to remember, and then that stress and anxiety starts to build where you're like, oh my God, I can't be that guy. Oh my God, I'm going to be that guy. Yep, I'm totally that guy, where I've just absolutely crapped the bed big time. But yeah, it's so difficult for such a simple game. Yeah. It's so difficult, because then you're laughing at other people. And then at the same time, oh no, what was there? And then you don't want to reject the card because you're not sure that it's not what they said. They might be like, please accept my toaster. You're like, oh man, I know it's not a toaster, but do I definitely know it's not a toaster? Because if it's not, then I cop the card.
And if I have to give it to Mitch, does he know it's not a toaster? Or can I just say it's a toaster and then just bluff my way? Just do it with confidence. Yeah. And the thing that really messes with you is not all of them have the same direction on the back of them. Some have to be passed clockwise, some have to be passed anti-clockwise. So I might get something from Mitch, who's on my left. I pass something to Jules, who's on my right, and then he passes something back to me. And now I've already forgotten what Mitch just gave me, because there's skateboards and clocks and ducks and things being passed around. It's just a nightmare.
And initially, when you explain the game, it doesn't sound like there's a game there. You're playing, say, with 7 people. So everyone's got 1 card, 7 cards. Everyone does their little show and tell of what their item is at the beginning. And then they all go face down, and then they're never to emerge again. And you only introduce 1 new card. That's it. And it's just getting shuffled around, jostled around. You think, okay, it's 8 pieces of information. I can hold that in my head, surely. And then at some point, you just give up on that fantasy. And then you're just kind of taking blind guesses, because originally everyone's like, okay, well, I don't get why this is a game. It's just only 1 extra card. But then as soon as they've jostled around for a bit, and then that second, someone either gets it correct or stuffs up, and now there's a second new card, and you're like, oh, okay, I see the game now. I see that I have no clue what anyone has. I barely have a clue what I have. Thank God Dan's card is pointing the other way, because Lord knows what that is.
I was trying to work out a strategy, do I just focus on what's on my left and my right, and the one that's in front of me, because one of them is going to be coming to me. But you can't help but get caught up in what other people are saying, because at the same time, some of those cards, again, eventually filter around to you. So if you're not paying attention, it's like I heard MJ say a duck at some point. is the duck now in front of me, or is this the thimble? Or because they're all just completely random objects, there's no rhyme or reason to what's in play at any one time. And there were some games we played, because it was one of those games over the course of the weekend. It was like, what do you want to play? Let's get That's Not Hat out again. Let's play it one more time. And there were some games where we'd play it with 6 people. As Lauren says, you introduce one more to the game, and then they start going around. It would barely even go around once before we're already making mistakes.
And there's no, like you said, there's simple sort of like etchings or drawings. There's nothing else to be like, okay, I remember my card had blue, or that card had blue on it. So what might have blue? Yes, like there might be a whale or something like that. Or there was green, so it could be something on grass.
Yeah.
They're just simple drawings that, I mean, I probably couldn't pull them off, but, most average people could draw them. And that's all you've got to go on. The biggest bone of contention when I played was it was either a stopwatch and someone called it a compass, or it was a compass and someone called it a stopwatch. And we had to call Chris over and be like, Chris,
to adjudicate.
What is this? And I was hoping when we showed Chris, he's like, that's clearly a skateboard. It's like, so it would have got all lost. And then it's like, no, we totally got it wrong.
Having said that, though, Mitch was deliberately muddying the waters, because someone would turn over and go, this is a skateboard. And he goes, that's not a skateboard. That's a Band-Aid on wheels.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And so when it came time to him, someone would go, Mitch, I give you this skateboard. And then he'd pass. And then it was his turn next time. He'd go, I give you this Band-Aid on wheels. And it's like, I'm already struggling to keep 6 objects in my head. And now you're renaming them. So now I've got extra objects in my head to,
Yeah.
But the good part is, because it's a closed pool of objects, you get these Hail Mary moments. I think, Dan, there was one point where you had no friggin' clue what was past you, and you think, okay, what did we start with? And you just called it and you flipped it and you were right.
Yeah.
And those moments are great as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, some of the best moments of the game were when someone just had no clue what it was, but they just passed it with such confidence. Because I think at one point there was either a birthday cake or a kettle on both sides of the table, and it's like, well, hang on, one of them can't be right. But both people said it with such confidence. I don't know who not to believe, so I'm just hoping it doesn't come to me. And I just So
I believe Jules so much, and every time he was just passing me a load of BS. It was never what he said it was.
So if you've got kids, how would you think this go with kids? Because I just think it's a step up from cockroach poker.
I think kids would go really well at this, because if you've ever played the Magic Labyrinth with a kid,
you're 100% right.
Kids are rock stars at memory games. Our processing speed and parts of our working memory peak at age 25, and then frankly, it's downhill from there.
Wow.
So kids are just sharper in a way, and I feel like memory and speed of thinking are both really good levelers for kids and adults when it comes to these simple games, because kids can kind of often do it quite well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sitting there fumbling, going, God, I wish I had a coffee, because I've got no clue what's sitting in front of me. So I think, I personally think that it would be great to play with families and with kids for that reason.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always get smashed at memory games by my nieces and whoever else, like under the age
humbled.
of 15. Yeah, big time.
Oh yeah.
If it's not bad enough getting belted at like complex games, then I also get belted at like simple memory games too. So I'm as humble as they come. In fact, there may be a few humbler than me. But yeah, I really love that game. I think I'm going to grab a copy and leave it here at Mum's house so we can play it and just have a hoot.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I'm hoping mine arrives this week so we can play it over the school holidays with the boys.
That's not a hat.
Speaking of games that I've been playing with my boys, we were lucky enough to get a copy of a new game called Pikit, Pikit, from VR recently. And this is a card game that I've been playing with my boys. I taught them the other day, and then I was being lazy. I went and had a nap yesterday afternoon, but I heard them get it out, and Jack was explaining it to my wife, and they were teaching her how to play it, and they were playing it themselves. And then we had a 4-player game last night as well. And it's a game where it's kind of like a set collection where you're collecting cards from a marketplace based on the dice that you roll. But the key to the game is there's lots of opportunities to actually pick cards from someone else's hand, and it's one thing that kids love to do. We sort of have to pick random cards and try and get the juicy one. So the cards themselves, they're numbered 1 through to 11, and there's six of each card from the 1 through to 6, and they're all monsters. Then from 1 through to 7, there's 8 of the number 8, and I'll explain why in a minute. And then there's only 1, 9, 10, 11 in the game itself. and they're all shuffled face down, and everyone draws a couple of cards to start the game. So you've got at least a value of 10 in your hand, because all the numbers are actually equal to points at the end. So you just completely face value. So if you've got a couple of 8s, and that's 16 or 6 or 24, 32, whatever at the end. There's also these mechas. So you've got your kaiju, which are your monsters, and then you've got these mechas, which are your robots, and they're the doubles. So if you roll a double 1, you automatically get to take one of the mechas off the table, the double 1 mecha, the double 2 mecha, and there's only 6 of those. If you then, on a later turn, roll the double 2 and someone has a double 2, you get an opportunity to try and pick it from their hand. And if you don't get it, that's fine. You just get whatever. But that's an opportunity to actually target them and try and get their mecha, because the mechas are all worth 15 points at the end. So there's 6 in play. And if you have 3 or 4 of them, that's a significant point boost at the end of the game. But otherwise, there's a marketplace of 8, which are all dealt at random. What you're doing is you're rolling 2 dice, and you can either add the dice together. So if you roll a 6 and a 6 and a 3, you can take the 9 that's out there, if it is out there, or either or, if there's a 6 and a 3 on there. Or in certain times, you can actually subtract as well. So 5 and 2, you can take a 5 or a 2 or both, 5 and 2. You can add them together and take a 7, or you can subtract one off the other and actually take a 3. So you got a lot of different flexibility in what cards you take. After you've rolled the dice, though, any cards in your hand, any of the cards from 1 through to 7 also have an ability in the top corner. So you can discard one of those to get the ability. One ability might be that you can re-roll those dice if they suck. One really good ability which is the 7, you can actually manipulate one of the dice into whatever you want. So what the boys clocked very early is, if you roll a 5 and a 2, you burn your 7, you change the 2 to a 5, and then take the mecha that's there in play, because that's 15 points. Jack was onto that very, very quickly. There's another one where you can actually discard the 4, and you get to, again, pick from someone else's hand. The 6 you discard to actually block someone from picking, but that's only if they're using the 4. If someone's coming to you because they rolled the double, you can't block that one. There's a couple other little cool things. If you roll an 8, you get to take all the 8s in the marketplace, not just one. So if there are a couple of 8s, because it's harder to roll than some of the other ones, you can only get an 8 by adding your dice together. You can't sort of so quite often the lower ones will get taken away very quickly. So you want to roll the 8 if there's a couple of 8s on there, because they all go into your hand. But again, they can always be picked out of it. If you have any 3s in your hand, if someone accidentally picks your 3, the 3 is like a poisonous monster, and so they get penalized -3 at the end of the game, and that 3 gets discarded. So sometimes if you've got some really high value cards in your hand, it's good to try and get some 3s in there as well to protect them, kind of like when you play Curses and Covens, and you want to protect your witches by having some of the ritual cards in there as well, just in case someone picks that instead. And you just play until the deck gets depleted, and then once the deck's depleted, everyone gets one more turn, and then you just basically add up. Oh, there's one more thing as well. The bees are worth 1, but whoever collects the most bees gets a swarm. That's a bonus 15 points at the end as well.
Nice. That's cool.
And yeah, for just a little card game where you're just playing rolling dice, picking cards, and off the marketplace. But the most fun is picking it out of someone's hand and trying to get their high value cards. It plays in about 20 minutes. That's Pick It. And it's done by Repost Productions, who we know do Just One, So Clover. So the production quality is really, really nice. The dice are nice and chunky. And something that I thought was really, really cool as well, the container where the cards are sitting, that comes out, that lifts out. So you use that as a rack almost on the table with your cards for take and discard. And the bottom of the box has a really soft, papery kind of cardboard, almost like felt. So it's ready to go. You're rolling the dice into the bottom of the box because it looks like felt in the bottom of the box. Everything it's perfect.
I'm looking at it now. It's got like a Transformers versus Godzilla comic book style thing going on.
It's really, really cool. But they've thought of everything. So it's a really neat little small little compact family fun dice roller, good for traveling. That's everything you need in the box. And from memory, I don't think there was any plastic, because it's a really thick sort of cardboardy thing that the deck holder is made out of. Well, so it's environmentally conscious, which is great. We love that in our games.
Cool. Yep.
So that's Pick It from Repost Productions. Before we get to our sizzles, I want to hear a couple more. Now, there's still 2 more on your list, Connor. So pick one and.
Well, okay, I'll talk about a game that might be good for the lads, Dan, and that's Mysterium Kids. So have you played this, Dan?
Yeah, I've talked about it on the show, and Adrian sizzled it
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
tell me about your experience about it, because I want to hear
Nice.
all about something that you quoted during the week was the best game component.
Yes. So if you play Mysterium, you are a ghost, and one player plays as the ghost, and the rest of the group have to guess based on images that you're shown. So it kind of has this Dixit vibe with it as well. But as Dan and Adrian have talked about, what you do is you work as a team. And one person is like channeling the captain something, I can't remember his name. They flip over a token that has the numbers 1 to 5, and there's images on the board. And the way that you convey which image you are trying to evoke is by using a tambourine. So this tambourine, which is, like I said,
I was
so
calling it a
good.
tambourine when I talked about it, and then Adrian was calling it a drum, and it's like it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a tambourine drum because there's no bell on it.
There's no bell, yeah.
Do so it is like a tight drum, because I called it tambourine because it's got holes in the side where you hold it, like a tambourine, right. but you can't shake it.
You're right. There's no bells, which would have made things interesting. But it was so funny because it's one of those things where you start laughing because it's like, this is so obscure, but then you get really serious because we would look like we're in some sort of cult because we're all sitting around with our eyes closed, really concentrating and trying to. And because you sort of have a peek at what the cards are first, but not really. We were trying to sort of get to the part where you say boo and start using the tambourine for the clues as quick as we could. So it wasn't like, oh, what could it be? And then sometimes open it straight away, be like, it's that. But other times you're sitting there and debating, and you're like, oh. And of course, it's always the one person that's like, it's definitely, the fly and the dripping tap. And I was like, no, how could it be a fly? It would sound like this. And you start imitating it yourself. It's like, if I was a fly, it'd be like this. And then, of course, the one person that comes up with it's the fly and the tap is correct. And you're like, oh, we should have just gone with them. But yeah, like I had one where it was an egg and the door. So with the egg, I just got one of my knuckles and like wrapped really hard on the wood side of the tambourine, of the drum or tambourine. And then for the door, I did the like how people knock on the door. So like they're like, all right, so that's definitely going to be the door. And straight away like egg door, and I was like, yeah, guys, yeah, we kick butt. But yes, so silly and so much fun.
I agree. Yeah. It's so great. The concept is great, doing sound effects, but the thing that trips you up is not all the cards that you're trying to convey are objects that would have sound. And so it's like, how do I mean, the door is a great example because you've really sort of communicated that well. I had things like an hourglass.
Yeah, I had that one too.
And so it's like, how do you sort of tap on the drum lightly as if it was the sand falling through the hourglass, but then there could easily be something else of the 6 objects that does make a noise. And so how do you can just lightly move your finger out in a circle, but it doesn't actually, even though you're doing it in a circle like a spiral, it doesn't necessarily sound that way to people with their eyes closed. And
yeah.
And
so it's a bit that code namey thing where you might say clues and then not realize, like, you're focusing on what your words are, but then you don't focus on what the other words could be, and then you've inadvertently given a clue to something else. So by you wrapping your fingers on there, thinking that the popcorn, then there could also be like a centipede, which would make a similar sound with its feet on the ground. So it's like, and then you go, oh no, and then we had the rule where it's like, nope, you have to turn around while we're guessing. We don't want any clues off your face. Like, we don't want to see.
You guys are strict.
People would like grab their shirt and put it over their face and stuff like that. Yeah. No. Because it was like, no, we don't want to know. But it's heaps of fun. Really, really silly. And a nice touch for Mysterium, because I like Mysterium. I like it as a concept, but it does get a little bit long. And you can be like, we're doomed. Like, there's no way that we can get everyone to the top now. Whereas this, you're in it to the end. You're counting the number of treasures. In a way, I would, aside from it being lighter, I would prefer to play this over normal Mysterium.
Yeah, I also think, as I often do with a lot of sort of kids games, I think this would make an awesome drinking game for adults as well. It would be an absolute hoot.
Yeah. I want to clarify something because we couldn't see it in the rules. Can you per se like knock the drumbarine on the table? Do you think that's...
I don't. No, it just says use it. I don't know. It doesn't actually limit how you use it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we
Although
did
you wouldn't be able to use it to play the piano or things like
hold on a sec, guys. Boo, I haven't finished yet.
Yeah, you're using it to introduce other sound effects to the game.
Use it to pull the broom. So one of them too, my niece Audrey got a mop and windscreen wipers for a car. It's like, what are the chances that both of those two cards come up? And then you also, because there's some stages where you have to do two sounds. You have to get them in the correct order. So she had to do both the mop and the windscreen wiper. And we guessed them, but we got them switched around. So,
yeah. No, it's a very, 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 very clever game. Mysterium Kids. All right, I think it's time to crack on with our sizzles, and I'm going to come back to you, Lauren. What is your sizzling game for this week?
So the game that I wanted to talk a bit more about, Sizzle, is one that I played in Brisbane, the Sashi and Sashi game, Wind the Film. I really enjoyed this one. So you can pick it up as Photograph. It's been reprinted and redistributed if you can't pick up the original Sashi and Sashi Wind the Film. But if you see those two names, it's the same game. So Wind the Film, what you're trying to do is you're trying to play shots or take shots out in sequence. There's different colors of cards numbered from 1 through, I think, 13. And it has the thing with Scout where you can't rearrange the cards in your hand. Many games, but so you can't rearrange the cards in your hand. So you've got a list of cards. On your turn, you're going to pick up some cards from the display in front of us. So there's some face up and face down cards in like a grid, but you have to take from a row from very left or very right. So you can take it whichever order, but the order you pick it up in is the order it goes into your hand. And however many you take is the amount that you have to play. So you take cards from the display and you put them to the front of your hand, and then you're going to play cards from the back of your hand. But before you do that, you get to wind the film, which is move one card from the back, any number of spaces, or towards the back, any number of spaces forward. So it doesn't have to be the very back card, but any card can just move forward any amount of spaces in your hand. So that's the only time you're allowed to rearrange. So you want to pick up more cards so you can play more cards, because otherwise people are just going to have more cards out in their tableau in front of you. They're going to score more. But if you do that, then you play things that are incorrect. So the way you're playing cards is you play one number card, and then the next number you play dictates whether you're going up or down. And once you've started that direction, that's the only direction you can go in for that color. So you play cards, and then whatever number that is, the card you play after it is going to dictate the direction that you go in. So if the first card I play is a 5 and the next one for that color is a 6, then I have to go up now. Any card that I play that's lower goes face down. It doesn't count towards that row, count towards scoring. But when you go up, you're also only allowed to go up in jumps of up to 3. So you've got to be playing cards together sequentially, closely. So if I know that I need to play the grey 3 and the green 5 next, I've got those towards the back of my hand. I pick up 2, and then I get to play those 2. Nice and lovely. There are a few times in the game as well where you're going to be forced to play cards towards the end, and your hand size is going to shrink. And all you're trying to do is to get runs of cards that are very long. You'll score more points. If you're the first to get 3 face up of that color, you're going to get extra points. That's the whole game. It's a really interesting hand management puzzle, and it's really hard because you also, if you're better at playing the game than me, have to think, well, I can't take these 2 cards because then that's going to expose this card for Conor, and that's the one he needs to get the perfect shot, which is going to get him extra points.
Right, there's the rub.
And so there's that. There's the holding, there's the moving, the jostling the cards in your hand. The decision whether to take more so you can play more is really hard, because if you're only constantly taking one, playing one, at the end of the game, I'm going to have 10 cards in my tableau. Connor's going to have 20.
Yeah.
So if you're not as good at managing the order of the cards in your hand to be able to play more cards efficiently with that wind the film action is like the whole game. Rearranging your hand to the perfect order so you can get like these 3 at the back in the perfect amount, or just saying, I'm just going to burn this card and it's going to be an illegal move and it'll go face down and that's okay. It's really, really interesting. It's a very hard hand management puzzle. I know Joe really likes it as well, but if you like card games, if you like hand management puzzles, really kind of thinky card games, well, you really stuff yourself over. You're like, I've absolutely screwed the pooch because now this is the back of my hand and there's no way I can get it to the front, and then I have to play this, so I can't take that. And I've just
Is there any way you can
stuff myself?
Excuse the pun. Is there any way you can wind it back if you make a mistake, or once you started putting things out of place, you're just cooked?
Absolutely cooked.
Wow.
Which unsurprisingly happened to me. Yeah. So you're really kind of just looking at all your bad decisions playing out as you're forced to play these garbage cards. That is Wind the Film from Sashi and Sashi.
I love that concept, like you said, of the winding. And it makes thematic sense, right? Because you wind the film, which is what you said, like that's the name or photograph. That's what you would have done. All you young folk that listen to this, you used to have to wind your cameras or whatever to be able to take more photos. But
see, we didn't know what the photos looked like until we got them developed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I suppose it is. But yeah, I think that sounds really, really cool. I've probably become more of a fan of these smaller card games since I've joined the podcast and played a lot of them more with people. Games like this or Scout or even Trick Takers, I would be like, why would I play these games? This is something that like my nan would have played. Like I want to play big box games, but I can totally see now where the enjoyment, and it's almost, there's more strategy in some of these games than those bigger games where you chuck and dice or whatever. It's interesting that you have so much decision space just within your hand of cards. And then that's gone and implemented in other games. But I do also like that, so just double checking, you can move that one card as far as you want. You don't have to move it to the front. You can move it into...
Correct.
Yeah. That makes
I could move the second from the back card 2 spaces forward, or the very back one all the way to the front. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
So by doing that,
awesome.
you can then you could potentially correct small mistakes in your hand. But any large mistakes, they're just... Yeah, as you said, you're stuck staring at them for the rest of the game.
And not all the cards you take from the front are going to be face up. Some are face down. And when they're face down, all you know is their color and the range of numbers they could be. So some of them you're taking kind of blind as well. Lots of little layers. I would say in terms of kind of depth of decision space, it's a step up from Scout.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a bit more. If that's kind of the sweet spot for you, then this is probably maybe a drop too much of what you might enjoy. But if you want more to chomp on, then
I love it. It sounds great. How many times did you play it? How long does the game go for, and how many times did you play it?
4. I've played it now 8 times, but I only got to play it twice in Brisbane.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. The reason I ask is because Joe and I recently did a Patreon podcast for our Patreons. You can get that at Board Game Barbecue. What is it? Patreon.com/Board Game Barbecue. We talked about Trick Takers and Card Shedders and games that have sets and runs and things like that. And we talked about the meta game where there's one thing to learn the rules, but then after you start playing with the same amount of people, there starts to become like a meta game where I know exactly what Connor's going to do here. So I sort of try and play against that and the different sort of shorthand techniques that you use. So it's always interesting to play a game like Scout. Like we played numerous games of Seas of Strife over the course of the weekend. I can't remember who taught it to us. It might have been Chris.
Harry taught it to me.
But then the more you play it with those same people, the game changes, evolves again, because you know how they're going to play and you can sort of predict it rather than just trying to play the deck itself. Start predicting, I think I know what Jules is going to do here, so I'm going to play this card instead. So that's another thing, that's another sort of element that I enjoy with these games like Wind the Film or Scout, where you start to get to know how other people are going to play. That might change your strategy. And
that's interesting, Dan, because some people don't enjoy that. They really don't enjoy having to know what other people's, what their, I guess, biases are in terms of different moves in the game. They find that really frustrating. I agree. I think that's great. And that's another way to get to know people or showing how well you know people is like, I know you're going to try and get rid of that card. So if I lead with this, I'm hopefully going to drag that out of you. What type of player are you? Are you a gutsier player that's going to go out and try drag some of those trumps or whatnot out, or are you, more reserved and do little moves? So, for example, yesterday when we were playing Scout, my niece, she loved playing a big run. So she would take cards and take cards. And so my strategy then was to play smaller ones to try and shed all the cards that I could.
Yeah.
And then leave her with a whole massive hand of cards. That might make me a terrible uncle, but it made me a good Scout player. So I've got to choose what route.
Because then it puts her in a predicament. She goes, "Do I beat his small run with a small run? But that means I have to break my large run to do that, or do I just pass and sit tight on this large run and hope that I get an opportunity to play it?" Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Exactly.
I say why in the film what's good is you don't have to know the people or the meta too well, because calling it a trick take is probably misleading because you just play cards in front of you into your own tableau. But you do have okay, I know that Connor needs the green 9. Like, that's the next number. He's fishing for it.
Yep.
I've got it. I'm going to play it and just burn it. But also, you can kind of look at people and say, okay, well, I can't make my greens go up because Connor started at 13 and he's working his way down. So I've got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So you still do look to the other players, but it's a little more transparent.
Yeah. Sounds great. I'm spewing I missed it. But I was probably elbow deep in another trick taker that day. So, because we've played so many card games.
Absolutely.
So that's one to film from Saatchi and Saatchi. They make good games, don't they? Saatchi and Saatchi.
Charming. I just love the husband-wife duo.
Yeah. If it's okay with you, Connor, I'm going to go next. And I'm going to bring to the table a game that, a game we haven't talked about for a while, and that's the old Flip and Write. But this is actually a draft and write. In fact, it's right there in the title. It's called Draft and Write Records. Game that I picked up at the Brisbane game day from More Than Meeples, their pop-up store. Big shout out to the More Than Meeples. But it's a game that I played previously, so I knew it was a winner. And it was actually our friend Mike who taught it to me when I went to the board in the West event a couple of months ago. And Draft and Write Records is a draft and write game where everyone has their own pad, and it's a music theme. So you're actually trying to put together your own band. And just like with most good roll and write games, draft and write games, and I'll say that this is a good one. It is combo-tastic. So there's 5, well, it's kind of 6 if you count the top here as well. But there's different areas of the pad that you're writing after you draft cards, and everyone starts with 5 cards. And you choose a card, and then you just pass the remaining 4 onto the next person, and you alternate rounds going clockwise and then anti-clockwise. There's no passing across the table because it can play 1 to 6, but each round alternates between clockwise and anti-clockwise. And when you select your first card, you play it straight away. And there are 3 different kinds of cards. There's your crew. There's your crew cards, and there's singers, there's musicians, so it might be a drummer, it might be a guitarist. There are productions, so there's the producer. It could be someone on a big switchboard, or it could be someone with a clipboard or what have you. And then there's backstage. There's your roadies. So they're the 4 different types of crew. And the middle of your board, the middle of your sheet that you're marking things down on, there's room for 1 lead singer. And then there's room for 4 musicians. So you can have any combination. You can have 1 lead singer plus 4 drummers if you wanted. There's no rules. But you're only limited to 4 musicians. Then you're limited to 3 different productions and 4 backstage crew. And the way they're laid out in the middle of the sheet is they're actually linked to each other. And so when you play one, in the bottom right-hand corner of each of the crew cards, there is a number which you'll assign to the position you want to place on your sheet. And then they have a up, down, left, right color, or a north, south, east, west color as well. And so you color the north, south, east connections in. So the way they're laid out is they're connected, the singer at the top, but they're connected sort of left and right to the far band members, and then there's a south to the band member as well. And then right in the middle, there's north, south, east, west. And what you're trying to do is, as you start adding additional crew members to your band, is you're trying to sync up those colors. And if you can get, so my roadie on the right is yellow, and I put a roadie in the middle next to that roadie, and on his left is a yellow as well. Those colors will sync up, and you create a harmony. So there's a certain section on your sheet where if you get a harmony, then you can cross something off that as well. So that's really, really important. There's also these asset cards, and the assets they're usually instruments. So, and there's a separate section for those assets, and as you cross one off, you might get a bonus. But again, as they're linked to each other, you'll be able to cross off what they're adjacent to. So, if it so happened that you actually had, let's say you had a piano, and then underneath that you had nothing, and then underneath that you had a xylophone, and then above that you cross off another asset, you would actually get the bonuses that are in between those two, because now you've got two adjacent ones. There's also agenda cards, and that's like another section where, again, you're looking for adjacencies. You're also trying to get a complete row or a complete column, much like your Gunshot Clever. So you got different sections, and some of the bonuses you'll get will actually allow you to double back. So you might get a bonus from the agenda section, which will then give you an additional asset. It might give you a multiplier, which then when you place a number on a crew member, you can double that number. So rather you play a 4, and you might be able to double it and make it an 8, because there'll be certain objectives, which I'll get to in a minute. Or it might give you a bonus where you can actually start going on tour. So there's a map where, as you progress your bus down this tour and visit various stadiums, you'll get various bonuses there. So much like with a lot of these sort of roll and write, flip and write, Euro and rights, as Bobby would say, the game starts off slow, but after each round, as you start crossing stuff off, this gets me that, which will get me this, and I can cross this off here, which gives me a complete column, which then gives me that bonus, which will multiply this for me, but I'll also get this, and it just gets so combo-tastic. It is great, and I really, really enjoy the theme as well. As well as that, you've got some objectives or some goal cards, and there are 4 public goals in the middle of the table, and then there's a personal goal which everyone gets. And the game itself is broken. The rounds are broken into the week, and the weekend. So during the week, you're drafting your 4 cards. Now I mentioned everyone starts off with 5 cards, so you'll actually play 4 cards to your sheet, and then you'll put them aside in front of you. But when you get down to the last 2, you only play 1, and then you discard the other. So it's not like some drafting games, and I think of Sushi Go, which I play with the boys quite a lot, where the last card gets to you and handed to you, and you're stuck with it. This time you actually get the last 2 cards. You choose one and discard one, so you're not always stuck with whatever's the last card that's handed to you. We start with 5, and you only use 4. After that round is finished, after the week is finished, it goes to the weekend, where you, one at a time, check all of the public objectives to see if anyone's achieved them. And they have what's called a star power attached to them. Star power is like VP. That's what you're actually trying to get the most to win the game. But you go in order, and so and some of the objectives, some of the goals will actually have bonuses attached to them. So if you actually achieve the first objective, you'll get that star power, but you might also get a bonus, which you can then mark off on your sheet, which then might actually give you a goal further down the line. If the goals are shared, there's a tie, then everyone gets that star power. You don't divide it by however many people achieved it. And then so you work through did anyone achieve this? No. Yes. Anyone achieve this? Yes. You go through all 4 of them. Any of them that were achieved, you replace it. So there's always 4 public goals in play. And then there's also the personal one, which if you achieve, you get the star power on that one, but that doesn't get replaced. That's just a bonus one. And the game ends the first person to achieve 6 goals. So they would have filled their stuff, and it doesn't matter how much they are. If you were achieving some of the lower ones, you get them a lot quicker, but the points aren't. The star power isn't as high. If you get some of the more complicated ones, there's usually, like I said, a bonus attached to that, which you can then spiral into, starting another complete chain reaction in the middle of the weekend on your sheet. It's really, really cool. The other 2 things that will end the game. One of them is if you fill up your entire crew, all 12 people. That will activate the last round for everyone. And there's also an opportunity that you can actually have a fail. So there might be a chance where you actually, in the later stages, get a card and you just can't place it. It doesn't, because just by the way of it, virtue of the last 2 cards being handed to you, there might be 2 singers. You've already got a singer there. So that's a fail, and you'll actually mark off one of you. There's 5 fail little spots. And that they increasingly worth more and more negative points. The first one I think is just -2. The next one might be -5. Then it goes up and up and up. So if you actually fill out all 5 fails, then the game stops as well. But if you're looking for another sort of fun light game, it plays in about maybe an hour. It's usually only around sort of 5 or 6 rounds. There's very little interaction with anyone else outside of the drafting, and you can definitely, because it's not hidden, so you can see what people are going for. You can definitely hate draft in this. Take something in spite of someone else and pass it to them so they don't actually achieve a goal, or that you could maybe get a roadie or a band member, but they definitely need a roadie, so you'll take the roadie and give them the band member and shaft them.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. And one other thing I just want to quickly say, that it comes with pencils to mark it off, but it comes with the color pencils that you need to actually do the different colors, and it comes with a pencil sharpener. I've never seen a roll and write come with a pencil sharpener before. It's just like such an obvious inclusion for these sorts of games. You're always trying to fish around there. Where the hell is it? In the second drawer? In the kitchen? Where's that pencil sharpener? It comes with a pencil sharpener.
All the pencils are blunt in the box, so we can't rub it. It's broken. Yeah.
So
it looks really nice. It's a lovely looking production. I really like the idea of harmonies, coordinating the right colors.
It's clever,
really
isn't it? It's like, okay, we'll put
it
it together and try and get a synergy. No, it's a harmony. And then there's like a harmony thing. Same thing, it's columns and rows, and that actually gets you star power. It doesn't get you bonuses. If you fill out a column, it sings, Connor. And so, you want to really try and get those harmonies, but it's difficult to get all because you might get certain cards that have green. North, south, east, west is green, which is perfect because now you've got green everywhere. But if you start loading up on greens, you're not going to get the harmonies on the blues and the reds and the oranges. So, you really got to try and be clever with it.
Yeah.
So is that like Gunshon clever then, where the scores, you can get people that, blow past 300, stuff like that? Do you really have to be super efficient with the order of how you do things to really get those high scores in this?
Yeah, and there's certain things, there's certain blockers, there's certain connections within your crew and also certain paths on your tour that are locked where you need money to actually unlock it. So there's certain things you need to unlock money first on your, I think it's on the agenda track. No, it's on the assets actually, where the bonus is you get money and you can use that money to unlock some of the paths on the, otherwise if you go too fast on the tour straight away, you're not going to get to all the stadiums because certain paths are blocked and you need money to, which again, thematically, that's kind of cool. And also having certain, you can't place a band member until you get more money to get another roadie or another person in their production. So I really enjoyed some of the things that it's not just hey, let's just reskin a roll and write as a music thing. They've tied together some of the theme with being able to afford additional roadies and additional production and be able to afford to take your tour further to more stadiums. So and then the objectives, the public and the personal goals really do sort of drive you down one sort of path to try and get those objectives. Whereas you want to get this, but I really need to get those. I really need to have all of my band members with an average of 4 points or more. Or I need to have all my roadies with a total value of 20, which is where those multipliers will come in as well. I'll unlock a times 2. And the next time I play a roadie, even if it's only value of 3, I can cross off my times 2 and make it a value of 6. So there's a lot going on, but it doesn't take long for you to find the rhythm. No pun intended. and it just gets really, really combo-tastic. One of the things where you just play a single card, and then this gets me that, and that gets me this asset, which I can then use to get this, and this will get me that, and then I can move this bus down to this stadium, and that gets me blah blah blah. And it's like, it gets so exciting.
Yeah. I think like with roll and writes, I went, I don't know about you, Dan, but I went hard for a long time. I was like, roll and write this, roll and write that. And I grabbed all the different variations. And then I realized how many I had that I was never going to play again. And one of the reasons why is because I kept reverting back to effectively the same 3, right? I revert back to a clever game, whichever one that was, one of the Motor City games, and then Hadrian's Wall. And I was like, they're the 3. So I guess the way I feel about this is if you had a new roll and write and you were like, hey, Connor, you want to play this? 100%. But I'm not going to buy anymore. So like something like that, for sure. I would definitely have a game of that with you. It's just there's so many of them. And they must be hard for the creators to differentiate and make themselves seen. This sounds like a good one because it pops, like it absolutely pops off the page. It is a unique-ish theme. But it also seems like it ties into the theme really well. Like you said, with the harmonizing and then the fact that it is sounds like it does lean into the combos, which is what makes those 3 games or what the producers or creators do really well. One action lets you do 4 or 5 different things, and that feels so cool.
Yeah, it really feels like you're building a bit of an engine on paper. It does come with a solo game as well. I mean, it scales from 1 through to 6. But the solo game, it's good. It's really just trying to beat a score, though, and comparing it. But so is Hadrian's Wall, and I love that too. Trying to build as efficiently as possible. But then you get the randomization of the cards. You never know what the best laid plans always turn to porridge when you deal the next card and go, damn it. That's Roll and Write Records, and yeah, I'll bring it along to some game days and whatnot because I love it. It's from Inside Up Games. All right, Connor, you've kept us all in suspenders for long enough, and this again, I had pleasure in playing with you as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on your sizzle.
Yeah, so I'm going to sizzle Witchstone, which I believe Sarah actually sizzled once when she was still on the show. So Witchstone is another combo-tastical game. Sorry, Mitch, TM, Mitch Kitty, for coming up with that. Or at least he says he did. But what you're doing is you are playing as witches, and you have a cauldron in front of you and then a main board. So each player will have a cauldron that they're going to have, and that's their cauldron, and they play the tiles into that, and I'll explain them more in a sec. The main board is where you're competing. The cool thing about this is you're not really locking people out of the main board. In fact, you can use some of the paths that people make as well. It just costs you extra actions. So you've got the main board, and you've got the board in front of you. Where this game really shines is the action selection mechanic that you're going to take. So in your cauldron, you're going to place I'll call them a tile, but they're effectively two hexes together. And on these tiles, they will have an action that you can take. So the actions are, but aren't limited to, moving gems, which block your path in the cauldron. So you can move them around the cauldron. Moving your witch, which can then spawn more witches if you want. So that's a witch action. You've got the scroll action that lets you take scoring or endgame cards. So they could be instant cards, let you boost a power, or let you have an endgame goal. There's the wand action, which moves you down this track, which then gives you boosts, or might let you take an action with a boost, or let you score victory points based on the number of previous actions that you've taken. And then there's the pentagon. That lets you get tokens that you can add to your board to help placate or supplement the actions that you've taken before. So the way that you take the actions is you place those tiles into your pot. But where the combos come from is that depending on where you've placed those tiles, you can take that many of the matching actions. So say, for example, I've already placed two tiles with gems on them. If I was to place a third gem next to it, I could take 3 gem actions. And then if you've also placed it really wisely, on the other side of the token that you placed, there could be a witch action, which means that you're able to take X amount of witch actions. So if you're really good at this game, which Dan ended up being, and I still am not good at this game, you can create this really nice efficiency, this efficiency engine. Now, what will happen eventually, and what I think new players find, and Dan, you can probably speak about this a bit more, is that there's a certain number of each action within your given tiles. So once that tile is placed, then you have to wait for another tile to come up. So you might be moving your gem, you might be moving your witch, you might be moving the pentagram a lot early, but then if you've used them a lot, then they're gone. And you only have a certain amount of those within your stack of tiles, and you only get to see 5 tiles at a time. So you have to make a decision. All right, am I going to go hard and go early and get these really strong actions to begin with? Or am I going to try and spread it out and sort of take all the actions in an even amount and then focus later on? Because it's this type of game. It's a point salad game, right? There's heaps of ways to score. Whether that's by creating links using your witch power, whether that's moving your witches to different areas and then scoring them at the end of the game, whether it's moving up that one track, whether it is moving your gem in your cauldron to the end, and then you get to take an extra action. So what you're doing is not only are you trying to be efficient in where you're placing your tile, you're then trying to be efficient in where you move either the witches on the board, whether you move up the pentagon track, gram or pentagon track, whether you're placing that gem into another location on the other board, giving you bonus actions. It is so much like it's in terms of the actions that you take in your turn, it's really simple. You place that tile down, but then the result of where you place that tile can have huge effects on the board and then where you're going. Dan, we know you're a fan of comboing in games. What did you think of Witchstone?
I loved it. And I think it played well because there was 4 of us playing. I wonder how it would scale down with lesser players, because you're right, it was very point salady, and everyone kind of tended to be doing their own thing. Like Tom was pretty much the only one who was really advancing along that the wand along the bottom, and getting bonuses almost every time he advanced one step along the wand. I think yourself and Megs were doing a lot of the laying your witches and getting the villages on the main map, but also there was the columns where you're advancing along there, and I went really hard on that the octagon. Or the hexagon. I went around that probably 3 times, collecting bonuses every single time I went around, which paid dividends late game for me, because I was able to actually get additional tokens, put them in my cauldron, so that I think I maybe only played like 1 or 2 witch tokens side by side, but then I actually had some additional witch tokens from the cauldron, which I was able to put next to them. So when I did actually play my next witch token, I got 5 actions instead of just normally adding a third one and getting 3, because I'd nabbed some additional tokens from the hexagon octagon. But also there were endgame VP in that as well, that I was circling around and collecting them, and because they're scaled, I think it's the higher ones are at the top, were they?
Yes.
Or maybe,
so it's first and best dressed.
Yeah. So I was nabbing a lot of those too as I worked my way around that. So yeah, it was interesting the way everyone was doing sort of different things. But like Tom and I think we're only a couple of point difference, even though, and he won, but even though we were doing vastly different things. And then it was only towards the end where we started. I really do like the witch. Where you're spreading your witches out from your main location, and taking some of those, because I think there was red forest, blue forest, and green forest, which were also another objective. First person to get 3 forests, or no, they were the objectives from the track, and I collected some of those. But also, it so happened that some of the objectives that I picked up, or goals, or whatever cards they were, played right into circling the octagon, and also getting big groups in your cauldron of a particular
and then
icon.
And then you or Tom have the massive pile of witches on one of the locations, because it was like have X amount of witches.
We both. He did it, and I did it. But he did it, but there was an objective for it which I grabbed before he could, and so then I had to, just by virtue of trying to obtain that objective, I did the same thing. But yeah, I was really, really, really impressed with the game. It was great.
And there's this neat decision space, so decisions you have to make where, so for example, Dan was talking about going around the pentagram track. By doing that, that's cool. You take that action. You then will have bonus actions, but you may have missed the chance to lay your crystals down on the board, thus making it easily to traverse later. So it's like, okay, I could do that early, give myself good movement, because the crystals and the witches work in tandem, because your witches can move along any links of your own crystals to an endpoint. But if you want to move across someone else's, you have to spend one of your witch points. So it becomes less efficient to do that.
Yeah.
But if you're missing an opportunity to place it on the board straight away, you're then resigning yourself to be like, okay, I may have to use someone else's to move, even though it might only be 1 or 2 links. That's still, when you take a witch action and you might only have 3 points in that action, or 4 points in that action, that's a lot to use. And so on and so forth. Yeah, so Ryan worked on it as
Things
well.
Pushing and pulling you in different directions.
Yeah. Witchstone, super cool. I remember when Sarah was talking about it, I was like, I got to play this game. And then Harry taught it to me online. And then I've played it in person a couple of times. It's so good. If you like combo games, if you like having multiple ways to score and valid ways to score, I think that's important. Some ways it's like, well, there's no point going down that track. And like you said, you and Tom had way different ways of doing it, and you scored really well. Me and Megs, even though we'd played it before, we had different ways, and we ended up on similar scores. So yeah, it's a very clever game, a lot of fun, and really, really tactile as well. I like when you're putting stuff on the board and as the game grows.
Yeah, I've not played this one. It looks really interesting. It's cool because Rannick, he's not really known for point salad specifically. So it's kind of like he took a leaf out of Stefan Feld's, kept some of the clean aspects of his kind of designs in terms of like the decision space, the route building, the pivoting based on, the random setup, which is really, really cool. It sounds a bit like Millefiori. Have you played that one?
Yeah, so I've actually played that first, and it does feel like that as well. I feel like Millefiori is a little bit more competitive in terms of people can steal stuff off you. I know at times, Tom was stealing cards from Dan, for example, the scoring card that Dan wanted. But it did kind of feel like you were battling your own efficiency. And if you weren't first to something, you weren't terribly punished because there was always another red forest you could go to. There was always, stuff like that. So, yeah, it was, Miller Ferry is great. I love that game too. And I think I've spoken about it on the show. But yeah, very, very similar vibes.
All right. Well, I think we're getting close to the record for the amount of great games we've talked about on an episode. Episode 287, we've had Wind the Film from Saatchi & Saatchi. We've had Draft and Write Records from Inside Up Games and Witchstone from... Who's the publisher?
Hutch.
Oh,
Hutch.
That's
Hutch,
right. I remember. You're right.
Mark.
Hutch, because I was going to post something and I couldn't work out whether it was Hutch or Hunch because the way their graphic is, it could be either or. It's like camel cup, camel up. Like, I don't know which one it is.
If you're looking for a new board game, you need to check out adventgames.com.au. They have a great range of games, including pre-orders and hot new games. Anything you could be looking for will be there at Advent. Dean provides excellent customer service that is second to none, and he's always keen to support the Australian board game community through events, game days, and even through sponsoring a podcast. So head over to adventgames.com.au today. That's adventgames.com.au.
Okay, and it's time for Question of the Pod, the segment that we know and love. But before we do, just want to have some quick announcements to make. The 4th annual Board Game Barbecue Awards are coming. We delayed it a little bit this year because we wanted to really give Oceania Month its own thing. But this year, we're going to be tying it into our awards night is going to be at PlayCon, which we're really, really excited about. So that's why we've delayed it a little bit. But the 4th annual Board Game Barbecue Awards will be celebrating the best games of 2022. But you can start thinking about who you will nominate for our categories. They are Best Solo Game, Best Party Game, Best Light Game, Best Medium Weight Game, Best Heavy Game, Best Artwork, Best Expansion, and of course, Game of the Year. So these will be games from 2023 that we're going to be celebrating. All the information will come up on our socials in the coming weeks, and we'll no doubt be talking about it. And we'll break down the categories, and we'll talk about some of our favorites from 2023 in the coming weeks. And of course, as mentioned, PlayCon is happening this year, July 12th to 14th. It's going to be an enormous table space with our massive games library. We're consolidating all the libraries from Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. There's going to be at least 400 plus games for you to play. Plus, there's still more games coming on their way. We've reached out to our friends in various distribution and publishers, and they're sending us a whole bunch of new games for everyone to enjoy at PlayCon. There's going to be panels and special events. We'll have game designers. Designer Alley is going to be a big feature of PlayCon. It's going to have local designers showcasing their latest creations for you to play, provide feedback, and just generally support the board gaming scene in Australia. By the way, submissions are still open for that as well. So you can check our socials. We'll put another post out this week. We've been posting it on some of the TGDA and also Melbourne Incubator, and there's the Sydney Design Group as well. So a lot of people are putting their submissions in, but it's not too late. You've still got a few more weeks. If you've been sitting on a gem that you really want to try and get in front of some actual board gamers instead of getting your family to play test it and trying to just, it's lovely, dear. Yep. You'll get some honest feedback. So go to play-con.com for all the information and don't miss out. Tickets are still available, but there aren't many left. All right, question of the pod. Last week's question was, and this was a doozy, what board game has educated you about a particular topic? And I love the way this question dovetailed from the previous question, which was, what's your favorite... what historical event would you like to see in a game? And then that led into what board game has educated you about a particular topic. Just quickly, either of you have any
I do.
Any responses? Yeah,
I do have one. So I mentioned Andrew Carnegie for Carnegie. But I wanted to give a little shout out because our friend Sarah, she mentioned this in the previous episode for that one. She's making a historical game, and I was talking to her about that. And there's the design of the game is based around this guy. I'm going to absolutely butcher his name. His name's Ignaz Semmelweis, and he effectively came up with how when women were giving childbirth, that it was really important to wash your hands. So he came up with the idea of hand hygiene, that the infection could be passed that could be contagious if like a fever happened or whatever. So yeah, so I know Sarah's working on this and she's super excited. So it's not out yet. I kind of cheated a bit. It's not out and it might not be out for a while, but I just thought it was a really cool concept that I'd never heard of. What about you, Lauren?
Probably the one that first came to mind was timeline, just when things were invented and those little tidbits, like how early the teddy bear was invented and it was earlier than peanut butter, which was later than this. So stuff like that, which I feel like I've got little tidbits from. And then the other education just comes from not the game itself, but there's a theme and I just get stuck in a rabbit hole and deep dive and then just want to learn all about that thing because I've played the game. And this normally happens in a solo game when I get distracted. About 30 minutes have passed and I've just been reading an article about Sekigahara, but I need to be playing this game or whatever it is, right? But yeah, so those are probably the things that come to mind.
It's funny. The first one that I thought of, and maybe this is telling because of my collection, because I didn't have a lot but the first thing that came into my mind was Three Sisters, and just the concept of Three Sisters, where it was Indigenous peoples for centuries used to grow those three different things side by side. So the corn, no, what was it? The beans would actually they would plant corn, beans, and squash, and the beans would actually climb up the corn stalks, so it almost provided like a natural framework, if you like. And then the beans transfer nitrogen into the soil, and then which helps the squash grow. But the squash, with all the leaves and whatnot, would actually cover the ground and prevent weeds and keep the pests and stuff away. And the fact that like Indigenous peoples for centuries clocked onto this so long ago, that was just a little knowledge bomb that Motor City Games dropped on everyone. Just went, I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, on that note as well, just the amount of words that I've learned that are kind of in a board gamer's lexicon that no one else uses. Like, who uses the words tableau and orthogonal, right?
Yeah.
And then also, but on the agricultural note, I learned that a dike was the kind of wall or embankment to stop flooding, and random words like that. A bunch of German words.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got as a result.
100%. Do you want to check out? You checked out our Instagram, Lauren. Were there any other comments there that from the community that grabbed you?
Yeah. So 1,000 Rats. I don't know if that's David or Samara, but they said Watergate seems obvious, but there's a lot of historically accurate information in there. It also makes it clear how much of a struggle it actually was to try get Nixon impeached. Beneghetti8 says, Pax Pamir 2nd edition. I'd never heard about the great game before, but found that time in history fascinating. I've only played the game once or twice, but have kept it partly because I want to keep exploring all the tidbits of historical facts on all those cards. Those are great. And then Osfry as well says the origins of fair trade coffee and coffee traders. I love that game.
Yeah.
Wide spread of topics.
Fair play. Connor, you checked out Facebook and X.
From Facebook, Eugene Umatio says, anyone that learns hegemony should get a degree in socioeconomics. And I highly agree. Shalene Scott has jumped on board and said, second for hegemony. It's never been more clear to me that after playing the game, how the different parts of society interact with each other. And yeah, I think when you play this game, you almost have to role play each of those, like whatever role you are. Like if you don't, it makes it like not as fun. Phil Every says the whole BIOS series, most of the PAX games I've played. Oh, and Brussels 1893 has maybe more of an Art Nouveau tragic. And then finally from Stu McLee has said, I didn't even know there was a Finnish civil war before playing All Bridges Burning. Yeah, so that rounds us out for the community's answers to the question of the pod.
And thanks to everyone who contributed. And we're looking for some great responses for this week's question. And given that we are filming on Easter, we thought we would ask the question, and maybe you're not even aware this is a thing, so this might be an education for some people, but what's your favorite board game Easter egg? And what we mean by Easter egg is something that's hidden within a game that's a little nod to a particular genre. It might be a movie, a TV, or some sort of other pop culture. And we can give you a few examples. Lauren, you talked about a few before the show.
Yeah, we've got, well, the one that I thought of straight away was the box art for Hansa Teutonica. It's got your classic beige Euro guy sitting in a chair, but behind him on the art is framed the board from the board game,
That's
which I think is
clever.
just
That is cool.
chef's kiss.
Yeah.
And then I think, Connor, you were mentioning is it Ian O'Toole that has a lot of little
Ian O'Toole drops little hints in his artwork and with his graphic design.
He's
the
got
other
a couple in the most recent Vital game, Weather Machine. There's a few little nuggets from his childhood or from British television. Yep, that are hidden in there.
And I know it feels so long ago after our conversation with Andrew Bosley, he likes to drop Easter eggs. So in Tapestry, big civilization building game, there's heaps of different references. So he said there's like a Star Wars reference. I think he said there's a Jaws reference as well. And yeah, so anything that's a reference to something else, it doesn't necessarily have to be to another board game. It could be, a piece of art or a rules reference, or a line from another movie that's in flavor text. That's what we're talking about.
One of my favorites is Phil Walker Harding, and is it Phil Walker Harding and Matt Dunstan? The My Shelfie game, where you're dropping things into the shelf, and there's some tiles that actually have board games on them. But if you look closely enough, even though they're just like patches of color, you can tell, if you know enough about board games, you can tell what games they are just by the fact that it's got a bit of green, a bit of brown around the edge, and I think that might be Barrage, and this one is the same shade as Wingspan, and if you know of any Easter eggs in some of your favorite board games, share with the community. Our question of the pod for this week is, what's your favorite board game Easter egg? All right, it's time to round things out with Swear and Oath. But before we do, just wanted to give a quick plug to our Patreons. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. And our brand new Patreons for this week are Ingrid and Shane K. Thank you so much to both of you for joining the Patreon and all the shenanigans. If you do join Patreon, you'll get access to exclusive podcasts, but also there's a special channel in our Discord as well, where a whole lot of different stuff happens, and we also do Patreon exclusive events like Jackbox nights and trivia nights. I think we may have a trivia coming up in the next month or two as well, which one of our Patrons is going to run. So remember, if you want to support the podcast, you can always go to patreon.com/barbecue, Board Game Barbecue. Sign up to donate, get exclusive access to all of that and more. We've got an exclusive Patreon party that we're having at PlayCon as well for everyone, just as our way of saying thank you for their support. But then, of course, there's plenty of ways to support the podcast without donating. The easiest way is just to tell your mates. If you're going to a board game event, we had someone just recently who was from the States. I wish I could remember their name, but so thank you so much for them. They actually were traveling around Brisbane, just happened to stumble upon the Board Game Barbecue event in Brisbane. So they took some photos and they shared it on an American board gaming channel book, and people were asking questions all about it, and it got a bit of a conversation going about conventions in the States versus conventions or lack of in Australia. So yeah, the best way you can support us by telling people about it. You can also go to Apple Podcasts, leave a star rating and write a review for us, or Spotify's star rating system. You can get involved in the Board Game Barbecue community by joining Facebook, following us on X, on Instagram, we've also got YouTube. We started posting all of our episodes on YouTube now. Joe has actually started posting some stuff on Board Game Geek for us as well, which is fantastic. And don't forget, we'll be telling you in the coming weeks, the Board Game Geek nominations are coming up again. We were very kindly nominated for a Board Game Geek award or a Golden Geek Award from the community last year. So we're hoping we can get some more attention and get another nomination this year. And of course, there is a Discord community where there's always games and conversations going on. So whatever your vice is, get involved, support the show. All the links are going to be in the show notes. Now, Lauren, things are looking a bit grim over there for your oath. Do you want to share how you went with everyone?
Oh man, Lignum is going to be kind of the just haunting thing lurking in the bushes at the back that I'll just never do. But we're gonna. I feel like I should just stop mentioning it, and it's just going to continually roll over until I eventually get it played.
So
I desperately want to play this game
when you do play it.
Yeah, so it'll be a big surprise. I did do my other one, which was to teach some Japanese trick takers in Brisbane. I taught Nikosu dice to a bunch of people. It broke Harry.
Including myself.
It broke Harry.
I bloody loved it.
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah. It's not for everyone, but my little darling. So I taught that one, and I also, Wine the Film, not really a trick taker, but got to teach that, and then a few other little ones as well. So for my new oath, I was going to make it to play Buttons and Bugs, but I managed to squeeze that in already, which is exciting. So what I'm going to make my new oath is a game that I've got coming, which I'm really excited for, which is a party game called The Same Game. So I want to get that played with my family because I think they'll really like it, and maybe Lignum, we'll see.
I've never heard of that.
No, me neither.
It's the one I was explaining to you. I reckon it's going to be a sizzle, but really quickly, you've got a bunch of different characteristics, length, price, weight, whatever.
Yes.
That one, right? And there comes up with a word, and I've got to say the word is skateboard. And my topic is length. I've got to come up with a word that's a clue for everyone. It's something that's the same length as a skateboard, but not the same weight, not the same price, not the same whatever.
What a brain burner.
Yeah, so I've got that coming. So that's my oath to play The Same Game. Hopefully it arrives in time.
Awesome. Can't wait. Connor, how'd you go?
Nope, didn't happen. Mine was
You guys.
I know, I suck. Mine was to play John Company or Joko 2nd edition, and everyone bailed on me up in Brisbane. I don't have a copy of this game. I did it because certain people in the community talked big game. It was like, we're definitely going to get this played, and we didn't. So even Jules tried his best to get it going, and everyone flaked. So I'm normally nice. I'm normally like the happy-go-lucky guy, but I'm not happy with how many people flaked on playing John Company. So those people are put on. No, I'm just kidding. It was busy, and I don't know if there would have been an opportunity. I overestimated the amount of time that we had to play a game like this. Look, I would love to play it. So yeah, if there's ever a chance that I can with people in the community, that'd be great. So I'm kind of going to put this in the Lignum bracket there, Loz. I'll just say, yeah, it'll happen when it happens. I'm not going to keep going about it. But my new oath is to play, it's already set up on the table actually, is to play a Guild of Merchant Explorers with my family. So
love that game.
Yeah, I know.
So good. It's so good.
So good, so snappy. And at the end of Oceania Month, I know this is an Oceania podcast and it'll be out by the time it's April, but it's Matt Dunstan, so one of our good friends of the podcast. Yep, just nice little time.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. Good friend of the show.
Wow. Since you guys didn't do your oath, one of us had to. Unfortunately, it wasn't me because I haven't played any more Seventh Citadel since I first cracked it open. But I am going to because I want to talk about it on an upcoming episode. So, no, I have not got Seventh Citadel to the table. To be fair, I was in Brisbane for a good length of time between the last pod and this one. But that's coming. But my new oath, I wanted to actually try and get it done before the show and to sizzle it and share it with Lauren, but that didn't happen. But I am going to. I have picked up I've acquired a copy courtesy of our friends at Games Paradise. So shout out to Greenie and to Conan. I have a copy of Project Echo, which is a solo RPG game, which I've grown a very, very firm fondness for, and I have Lauren to either thank or blame for that. But this one, much similar to, you'll recall, I sizzled 1,000-Year-Old Vampire last time, which was a journaling game. This is a journaling game as well, but you're actually traveling through time. And so when you journal into a day planner. And so you're literally moving through time, through dates and journaling things down. And it uses... you start off with my understanding is you start off with a very basic time travel machine. So you're using dice, and you might be using a coin to flip heads or tails, but then you start using decks of cards, you start using tarot cards. So you've got a whole different range of things at your disposal, and you're trying to either outrun or track down this entity over the course of the game. And it can be quite an involved thing, but what you can also do is next time you play it, you can use the same day planner. So it's almost like now you're doubling back on certain dates and events, and it encourages you to, if you happen to travel back to a date and it is the 14th of February, for instance, then you tie Valentine's Day into what you're journaling. Or if it happens to be a family member's birthday, you can tie that into what you journal as you're skipping around time. So I'm super excited to play this one. I really, really want to see how it plays out, and the time traveling element really, really intrigued me. So I don't Harris swear to play Project Echo, which is ECCO, by the next time on the podcast. I'll send it up to you, Lauren. You can check it out as well.
Yeah, it's been on my list because you can get it a digital copy, so it's been on my radar for a while. So I'm very, very keen to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so that's 3 exciting new oaths, even if we had 3 failed previous oaths. And that rounds us out for episode 287. So thanks very much, Lauren and Connor.
No
Great
worries.
chatting to you.
Pleasure as
Cheers,
Felt like we had
mate.
a bit of a recap on our Brisbane trip as well. So that was super exciting. And thanks again to everyone up there, and especially Adrian and MJ for being the hosts with the mosts when we crashed at their place, but also the Brisbane community. It was great to meet a lot of you up there while we were there for the game day. And until next time, play more games. Bye.
Yeah, buddy. See ya.
See ya.